Hello, I said I'd do another video on Blue Steel because I just like to talk about the deck. So in this one, it's going to cover all the staples or all the cards you'd commonly see in a deck. There's a few things that we just don't see as much in set 4, but I thought they're worth including and worth talking about. All I've done is gone to Dreamborn and looked at all the cards and went, "Yep, I've seen that in I've seen that in a Blue Steel deck," and put it in there. But of course, you've got the whole color palette. You've got blue and steel to play with, but no point of adding every common card in there. So yeah, I've had them in. There's some ones in here that just go in the deck, don't they? And we'll just go through why they are in the deck as well, and why a reason you might not play them. So yeah, we'll start with Captain Hook, of course. Captain Hook doesn't appear in every Blue Steel deck. He usually doesn't appear in one jump ahead decks, and the reasoning around that tends to be because you one jump on two, you're gonna jump to four, and on four, you don't really think, oh, I'm on four, I'll play a hook and do something else. You think, oh, I could probably Tala or I could hear him here. So there's no real point of including him in those sort of decks. But I still play him quite a bit. He's very good into Mickey decks. If you paired against someone who's going quite aggro, quite low to the ground, so purple still, and what we tend to see with red purple these days, you can just on the draw, you could even do it on the play, get a Captain Hook and a Smee set up, so you're just straight in there winning the board, or you're able to trade, and then you can get to your ramp, and then you can get to your big Tinkerbells, and you get to your sort of bigger threats. Robin Hood, I'll pair him with the 5 drop, and we'll just talk about both of them quickly. You don't see him really at all in set 4. Um, it was, I think it was a reaction to Amber Steel, because what was happening, you'd get wheeled quite early on in the game, and because you mulligan quite heavy in blue steel, you would just lose all of your options, and then you'd hope you get wheeled into something else. So you could shift Robin Hood on 3 and then sing Whole New World yourself or do anything. It was also quite a reaction to green steel because merfolks were just going mad. But we don't tend to see that anymore, so the turn 3 shift to Whole New World or just getting a 3/6 on board that can trade isn't really as needed anymore, but it's still in the deck. I think a store champs level, you might still see it here and there. It might still be included in some people's lists. But yeah, it sort of just fell out of favor because it's just not all we need to do in set 4. Scuttle, on the fence with this card. I can't see why you'd include it in any deck that has a whole new world in the deck, but some people are. I think it would be really nice to use in a non-wheel version, and I'll cover non-wheel versions all the way down here when I get to a whole new world. But yeah, you're just going to lack draw, and if you could find a Porpscore, you could find a Quill, or it gives you pseudo draw in a sense because you'll get to look at the top 4 and you get to take a card and you get to do something with it, which is just really nice. But he's a 1/3 on board. I'd always play a Smee over a Scuttle, so he doesn't quite make the cut for my lists, but he's still a blue steel choice, so I put him in here. Magic Broom. If you watch the Chicago Atlanta, the Candio, how he plays the broom is really nice. It's clearly been added to remove Diablos because it gets evasive when it gets to attack on your turn, and also what it can do is just stop them exerting their Diablo. Because the ideal, not the ideal play, but the common thing is you'll play it, they'll play a Diablo, and then they just won't exert it for the card draw unless they can find a removal for a 2/3, because the trade is just too nice. And then he sort of doubles up as removal for just any evasive. So if there's a Pascal or a Pegasus that's being a pain, you can also use him. So he's not bad on the board. Still, I don't seem to play him. I opt for just a hard removal option like Baboom, or just wait till you get a little bit higher and you can grab your sword or Tinkerbell. So, but he's still around. I'd expect to see him as well, and quite a lot of store champs and probably regionals going forward, because he does put quite a lot of work in. Smee, I've just my last video I talked about how much I love Smee. It's a free 3, a quest for 2. Don't know why they printed this card. It's really good. Um, yeah, there's much more to say about that. He usually gets a 2/1 if he trades into red purple. If you get Smee down and you have a Zeus in hand, you can remove a castle. And in the mirror, or a lot of games, once you get the Cogsworth down, he's not going to even take that 1 damage. If you can afford to play a hook and a Smee without ink draining your hand, sort of ink locking your hand. That's also good as well. You can now do 6 damage on the board, and he's not going to take that 1 damage, so he can trade nicely into 2/3s or 1/3s. So yeah, just solid card. Judy Hopps is in here. She's I don't think you'll see her played, but I've added her. There was a little bit of a fun time. I think I could be wrong. It was Zan Snyder. I saw it in one of his lists for one of his store champs, and the idea was just that this is my consensus is he came under the same category as Benja, which I haven't added here, but I would also add Benja to this list as well, because he's sometimes played in blues. Oh, there he is. Sorry. Yeah. But the only difference is she gives 1 card draw. So if you're in a situation where you're low on cards or whatever, you can play her and then draw an extra card to keep the gas going. Also, I think a lot of times with Benja, this was mainly in set 3, you would play it for the mirror or for red blue, and then all the other matchups he's just not doing as much work. He's a 2/3 2 quester, but he doesn't do much. So you could play her and just get that 1 extra card draw. But I'm not going to over explain and over say how amazing Judy Hopps is in blue still, because she's not. But you know, she's mentionable, and if you came with that theory I just explained, I wouldn't be confused if you wanted to play her really. And then we go to Mickey. I play Mickey versions over 1 jump. I like to have all of my ramp consistent to turn 3, so turn 1 and turn 2 is what I want to do with it. Um, so if I want to smee Mickey, I can. 1 jump can sort of mess up that curve a little bit, but the extra ink is very good if you're hyper ramping for the dime finisher. Um, I think it's really solid, and also as well, going back to Hook and Mickey versus Red Purple right now, we're getting into a situation with Big King Undisputed, which is if we even are on the play, if we sort of ramp up to play our 5 drop down, and then we want to, so this is player draw. If you ramp up to your 5 drop, you play your 5 drop, and you don't have anything else on board, they can just play a King Undisputed and take out your 5 drop, and then you can't sing a whole new world. So it's just nice to have sort of things on board that will just soak up a B King Undisputed. Tremaine's sort of not in a lot of people's lists right now, but I think you'll see resurgence in her, and she's still not out of the meta. She's not a bad card. That's not what happened in set 4. It's just we got loads of other cards added that people wanted to include, but yeah, I like to have things on board that can soak up that removal. Also, as well, if you're in the mirror, if you go Smee, Mickey, Cogsworth on the play, you've pretty much secured a win because you're going to be questing for X amount each turn, as many as you want to turn sideways. It's just really strong card. I've added Winnie the Pooh. It's a card that if you go into any forum for Blue Steel, gets in the debate. People tried it a lot more in the earlier sets, but I don't think it's that great a card. The only reason why is people wanted it is it's inkable, because Blue Steel comes with quite a high unink count. You usually are I think the lowest you can go is 12, and even still I wouldn't do that. It usually caps at about 16, 17. So people thought, hey, let's not try Mickey, let's try Winnie the Pooh. But it's not a great card. You require a turn to ramp, so you won't be getting that quickly into turn 5. Play 5 drop, then sing the next turn. So it's not a great card, but do quest. I think at some local level play you might still see it, so it's worth mentioning. But yeah, I won't over explain that card because it's not amazing. Benja has just sort of really fallen out of favour. It was quite a common thing in set 3, just for the mirror, and like I say, if you have a 2 quester, if you say you got into a situation where you went Smee and then into Cogsworth and then Wheel or whatever you want to do, and then you Benja whatever item they have, most likely the Quill, you're in a really good spot. You've got you got 3 2 questers, and you've got Cogsworth as one of them. So that's just a really good position to be in. You can keep turning sideways. They're going to struggle on removal. But right now he just doesn't quite fit the cut for a lot of decks. Just due to on 3 it's unlikely you're going to play him over anything else. There's a lot of great cards to add now. He doesn't trade very well. So yeah, but he's worth mentioning. And also Hardhead Beast is just taking his job, as we're seeing less and less Tragic Beast. But he's still worth mentioning. Again, it's a card. If it's on this list, I wouldn't be surprised if someone played it. So yeah, it's just another item tech removal. which is pretty good if you want to jank up their quill or their dime. Belle is dropping from people's lists, and I can understand why. You've got other dime targets that are just doing a little bit of a better job. I still play 2x of her, and I play around with playing 3x of her. She can double ramp for you, which is really, really good. If you get to 5 and you set up a Cogsworth, or you set up any 5 drop, or even a 6 drop, to sing your Holy World, you can play her first, Holy World, and then you can quill, double ink, and you can just ramp, you can just go for a mile. And if they haven't dealt with her, but they usually will, I mean, most decks are built with answers, but if they haven't, she's going to get to that 5, she's going to get to that 10 ink, and then she's going to start questing for 5. So I just think she's still really strong to have. Sometimes as well, you'll find a game, you try hardest to not have these games, but you will have a game where you miss ramp on 3, or you miss one jump, you miss your ramp, so you can get to her, and you can play her down, and it's your last ditch effort to sort of get that ramp, because Blue Steel's a great deck. If it misses ramp, it's just a mid-range, like sort of semi-good deck, with a bunch of steel removal options, but you really want to be playing with the ramp, so she's just always good. I mentioned Tala. Tala's quite lovely. I'd love to include her, but I think she only really is viable in a one jump ahead deck, where you can one jump on 2, then play her out to pick 2 cards or whatever if you're sort of struggling a bit, and then you've got a 3/3 on board that's going to start trading. You can threaten castle removal. She can sing a Zeus. She's just, yeah, she's quite a strong card, and because of the new Fortisphere, we're seeing less and less of Develop Your Brain. And it's at the point of I'm not seeing Develop Your Brain anymore, and her on play ability is basically Develop Your Brain. So yeah, I think she's really good, but she's just not making the cut for my list, I'm afraid. Uh, Hiram is really strong. I mean, actually, I don't think I need to explain why Hiram's in the deck. Very good, 1/6, probably one of the best, if not best, card draws in the game. Requirements is very low. You just have to have a item, which is usually a Porpsicle or a Fortisphere, but a Coil is always a last-ditch effort if you need it. And you've got them crazy games where you play a dime out and you Hiram it maybe against a green steel because that's all you had in your hand. So yeah, no need to keep going on about how amazing the little rat is. Audrey, I would never go down. I've tried to go down this route a couple times. Um, the idea is that you would get to a point. This was mainly. I'm not explaining myself very well. Audrey's not a good card, but the theory of her is very good. So you want to beat a Belle, say, and you want to beat a red blue. There'd be an ideal world where you could set up your Audrey, set up your dime, get the Belle out, dime tap the Belle, and then reset the dime to do it again to get 10 lore out of nowhere. Um, Her sticking on board is just a fantasy. It never happens. And with big Sisu as well now, removing anything that has 2 or less attack, it's just even more of a fantasy. So I'm not seeing her anywhere, but she's a 2/5 with ward, with a quite a quirky ability. Uh, I could say into decks that haven't got red removal, she might be a bit of a trickier thing to get rid of. But once she's exerted, she's just going to get removed, I think, by most decks. So she's not making the cut for me, but you still see a lot of blue steel players play around with her and trying to have fun. Cogsworth, uh, for me, a staple. I don't understand the debate when people go about removing said card. I think it's just really, really good. Yes, it's now struggling because it's always had the same issue into red purple, where once you sing Holy World, the likely chance is they will play a Maui and take it out, or do something else because they'll have things on board to remove it. But he's still probably the best card you've got for that 5-drop slot, so he's just got to stay in the deck, in my opinion. Yeah, into red blue again. Sisu is just going to take him out, but you ink him in those matchups. In the mirror, he'll win you it. Into any other steel deck, he'll win you it. You ask any green steel or amber steel player, they will say, I really don't like Cogsworth because, yeah, he gives resist. Once he's on the board, he's instantly an issue. Those decks don't play rush, so if you can calculate the chances of it being removed, you can even exert it to sing things. And once you play 2, you've pretty much locked in the board state. So it has to stay at 4x, I think, for me. Just really strong card. Tragic Beast. Tragic Beast is taking. I'll cover actually both beasts here. Tragic Beast. Sorry, Hardhead Beast. I'll cover both Hardhead Beast and Tragic Beast. Tragic Beast. set three felt really good. If it could stick, it gave you card draw, and we only had four popsicles and a Hiram, so the card draw was a little bit weaker there. Um, but it was still dying to Medusa. If you didn't have a Cogsworth set up as Zeus was taking it out, if they put any damage on it, you weren't getting the card draw. So it was this big investment for this payoff that was really quite good as well. Its second ability, I don't understand the argument that if it has damage on it, it can take a cast now, because there is no red purple player that would ever put damage on the beast for said thing. And also, I think all they would have is a Teeth and Ambition to do that, which is getting cut from most lists because red purple doesn't do chip damage. No, well, red in general doesn't do chip damage. It just does damage. It just takes things out. It just brawls Medusas, Tremaines them. Um, or it rushes and clears things. It doesn't do what we do. It doesn't do here's two damage, here's two damage. It just takes things out. So yeah, I can see it getting dropped. It doesn't really need to in wheel decks anymore. It's too risk to reward. Beasts, I've been playing 3x of it up till recent. I've gone down to 2x of it. Really strong cards. So at its height, it is the reason that will win you a red blue or a mirror match, because it will take out a quill, it will stop a dime. At the worst, it's a 4/4 that quests for 2, which I don't think is that bad. And it's another thing that can sing your Holy World or you'll grab your swords. So it's just a good card. 2x, 3x seems fine to me. I probably wouldn't go higher than that. You don't need to 4x it out, but it's strong card and it deserves to be in most people's lists. Chi Pao is it? I never got on the Chi Pao hype train. A lot of people did. My main issue was me only quest for one, and a big thing about Red's Blue Steel is that it's got a lot of big questers. You don't particularly care too much about your board. This is going to be a tricky one to say. You don't particularly care too much about your board because you're going to be ramping and wheeling, so you're just going to keep flooding it and playing a lot more powerful things. So Bodyguard isn't that amazing. Yes, it survives Medusa, it survives Maui as well, but it's just never really done enough for me. That seems like quite a quirky little thing that you can have in your deck. But if you played a one-off of him for certain matchups, that wouldn't be the end of the world in my opinion. But yeah, he just doesn't really make the cut. I don't want to preserve my board that hard to include him. But if you had a Cogsworth and a Chi Pal set up versus a steel list, like an amber steel or a purple steel or a green steel, you've got a really nice board at that point. But still, he just doesn't quite do it for me. So I've never really gone down that down that route of playing him. Covered Robin Hoods, yeah, like I say, 3/6. Even if you play him, actually, I would never really want to play him on 5 unless I could guarantee a wheel and they weren't going to Medusa it. But I've covered him with that. Ariel's been a great addition to the deck. A 3/4 with Ward. It's going to survive Sisu. It's pretty much its only removal options are a Tremaine, so we're forcing red, blue, and red, purple players to put Tremaine back in the deck. A B King if you don't have anything else, but trust me, if you play enough blue steel, you're going to get to a point where you play around it in that matchup. And then there's a lot of decks where you play it and it's just going to stick. I mean, in the mirror, it's going to require they have double grab your swords to deal with it. That's quite tricky to get sometimes. And if you can count they've done one or two grab your swords or they've got it in their discard, you know, she's just going to stick on the board and then you can just tap her with a dime. Against Scream Purple, a list that's not really appearing as much as it has, but I think it's going to get popular again. So I'm just going to talk about it. They have no interruption at all for Dime and her. Once she is set up and once you have your Dime, they can't do anything. They have no items, and you're just gonna be gaining 5 lore each turn. So really good card. I've been playing one off of her because right now the only thing she's really helped with is red blue because again they can't ice block remove it. They can't Medusa it. So she kind of sticks until they be prepared. Getting the items is a little bit tricky, but still having something you can dime tap even for 3 is quite nice. So yeah, 1 or 2 copies of her. She is uninkable, and the deck comes with a high unink count already, so you don't want to 4x her. I'd be surprised if you did that. I think you'd want to start including a lot more items as well if you did. But yeah, Gaston completely fell out of it in set 4, hasn't he? No one really plays him anymore. He's an uninkable, and we don't really need that deck search. We do need that deck search. Scrying is a very useful thing in a combo deck when you want to get the whole new world dimes and stuff like that. But he's just too expensive for what he is. He's 4/4 the quest for 3. That's really nice, but I think if he was inkable, you would see him stick around in decks. But being an uninkable has just been the killer for a lot of people. And Tinkerbell is going to be a staple in every blue steel deck, and now the aerial that's going to win us games, he's just going to fall out of favor. But as I say, maybe at a local level where I keep mentioning a local level. I don't believe local levels progress as quickly as online metas do. So he might stick around in people's lists. Some people might just like the card, so they'll play him. And so he still will do a good amount of work. Tinkerbell, probably one of my favourite cards, closing in next to Harem. She's you always 4x her in the deck. She's really powerful. You can get her out on turn 4 as well, if you quill each turn. So she just has to be included. Um, I don't really need to sing her merits. Everyone knows how good she is, but you've got things like if you get her out and your opponent has, say, into a green steel match, they have a a bunch of things, maybe an Aladdin, a 2-drop Ursula. They won't exert them if they also have a Diablo out because they're worried you're just going to hit, then trade for the Diablo. So she can stop. The Diablo, of course, will still quest, but no, she's really good for that. You have a play that it's quite hard to pull off as well recently, but it's still a strong play. Is you get a Cogsworth set up, you play a Tinkerbell, then you grab your swords and you clear a whole board. This is quite a common play. This is red purple, but they play so quickly now with Flynn, and it wouldn't even remove a Sisu. So we're doing that less and less, but it's still a really strong card, of course. So, yeah, I don't need to go on. I don't need to do a whole episode or video about how much I love Big Tinkerbell. So we'll move on. Hades, I've really enjoyed watching it in Sky's no wheel list. I think it has a good, strong place in that deck. If you're playing in a meta, possibly your local or just online, anywhere, and you're seeing a lot of blue steel, he's a really good thing to include. Because say you're battling each other and you're just, I play my Smee, I play my Cogsworth, I play yada yada yada. You can be like, okay, and I play this 3/6 the quest for 2, and one of your cards is now gone. That could be a Smee, it most likely because you can't target the Cogsworth, but that could also be a Tinkerbell, that could be a Tamatoa, that could be a lot of things. And now the tempo has just swung really heavily in your way. Um, I don't run it because I'm still quite confident in the blue steel mirror. I don't know, maybe I'm just a bit arrogant with that, but he comes with the uninkable cost, which also makes people not particularly want to include the card. But still really good. He'll always put a good amount of work in for you. He completely fell out of lists in set 3 and then sort of made his way back in again because Medusa was just too much. You would get to a point where you would take something out, put it in the Inkwell, and then they'd come back with Medusa, and the tempo hasn't really swung in your way. It's actually swung quite badly, uh, in the other direction. But still, really strong cards. Loads of reasons to include them. Maybe a 1-off or a 2-off. You never 4x him. The unink count is just too high, and he's not doing that much work. But yeah, a 1-off or a 2-off, really good for the mirror and just for spot removal. Big Cindy's still a problem. She's a 5/5, and we don't really have answers for her. So Hades or Let It Go is just really, really good. Simba is fun. That's what I'm going to put him down as. I enjoy the card. If I'm playing at a competitive level because I want to win something, I wouldn't tend to use him. But there's a really nice spot. Quite commonly into Amber Steel, so a deck that we aren't seeing as much of, where you just ramp up, you'd play him out, you'd take one of their 1-drops out. It could be a Cindy, a Queen, or a Robin Hood, or just something they've got. Even if you've got some damage already on an aerial because you played a Tinkerbell earlier, you can remove that as well. He's really good for that. He's also a 5/7, so a Zeus isn't going to cut it. A Maui isn't going to cut it for removing him. So once he's on the board and established, they're going to have to find some real hard removal to get rid of him. Again, not a card you'd 4x out, just not doing that much work. But I've quite enjoyed the play of when I haven't played a 1-jump ahead deck where you 1-jump, then you can quill up to him because you get that 1 extra law. You get that 1 extra ink, sorry. So you can play him out, remove something of theirs, and then keep working towards your win condition. So yeah, he wins boards for you in certain matchups. That's about as much as I can say about him. So yeah, if that was in your list, I wouldn't be surprised. Uh, Tamatoa, you can go the full 4x route, and you'll tend to see he will be 4x'd in a one jump ahead deck, or what I'm gonna probably start calling them one jump ahead decks, just decks that hyper ramp. If your goal is I want to get to dime and I want to start diming targets like a Tamatoa, a Belle, or an Aerial, um, he's really good for that. He's also a card that can retrieve the dime from the discard pile, which is I'm like watching a lot of players realizing that having a dime in your opening hand isn't the end of the world, because if you have a certain amount of Tamatoas, you can go and find it again, as long as you can keep the battle going and not let them get too much lore. So he's really good. He's a 5/8 in boards. Like I say, it's going to require hard removal again to get rid of him. Uh, Unlikely you're going to trade, but once he's set up, you're going for the end game goal there. And with all of these items now we have at our disposal, you can really get his lore count up high. Yeah, I say your opponent aren't going to want him to quest, because you're going to get 5, 6, 7, maybe even more lore from him, and then a dime will double that. So yeah, just really strong. It's nice to see him around. In set three wasn't doing too much work. I think I went to 1 on him in set three, but we're in the position we are in now. It's yeah, he's really strong. In my current list, I'm at 3x of him, as I don't go for the hyper ramp route. But into green still, if they don't have Bruno, he does a lot of work. Red, purple, it will force a B prep, and they're playing less B preps these days. So, you know, there's a nice thing with red, purple, and if you the more blue steel your players, you might burn a B prep, you might tease a B prep out of their hands, and then you're like, right, you have no more B preps. I can just completely win the board, and everything's gonna stick. So yeah, really good card. Develop Your Brain, it's still goated. It's still an amazing card. There's no reason for it to not be an amazing card. Most people, when we got to set 4, we thought we'll just take it out and put in a Fortisphere. I think that's fine, because instead of scrying, we're just drawing a lot more cards. So it's really strong. If you're like, I just need to find uh, my dime, or I just need to find my Belle to finish this game out, you've got, in a sense, a 2 card draw to find that answer. And then in set 3, it's less common in set 4, but you'd have a lot of games where you'd be like, wheel, right, I just need to find that Belle. So you could Gaston, you could develop your brain, you could just keep searching, and getting these sort of pseudo draws where I draw 2 and I pick 1. So in a sense, you've pseudo draw 2, but actually you've drawn 1 card. So really good. It won't. Also, as well, just before I forget, develop your brain, Tala, and Gaston all won't activate a um, Diablo. So if you're looking for an answer and you don't want to give them that extra card draw, just all solid choices. So that's a little bonus you get those cards. Fire the Cannons is great. The ideal play was always Quill, and then you had that 1 extra ink for Fire the Cannons or a Popsicle or something, and you could just throw that out there. Baboom seems to just be covering that for us right now, and it's inkable. And like I say, we're battling with an unink count in blue steel, just in general. So yeah, we'll put that in the list. You might see a 1 or 2 of it, but you wouldn't 4x this uninkable. But it's good if you're playing against quite an aggressive meta. You don't see Merfolk as often as you do, but it's still good for that. It takes out a Flynn, still takes out a Diablo. And you might even have some fun plays where it's Tinkerbell throw her damage out, and you're like, I just need to finish this thing off. So you could hit an Ursula or an Aerial, or anything that still, needs 2 more damage to remove it. So yeah, just a strong card. Still a debate between Fire the Cannons or Baboom, but I believe Baboom is taking the front runner right now. And I'm not on any Fire the Cannons, I'm on Baboom. So yeah, but still both good cards. Transit Decree, I've added it here. I think this is the one card actually. Let me just have a look. Probably the one card you will see really not appear in lists, but I think some people might try their luck with it. The idea is that when they play the Bucky out, you play Triton's Decree and it just kills the Bucky. The scenario you need is that they missed a 1-drop, which will be, they have 8 to 12 1-drops commonly. So it's unlikely you're going to do that. Besides that, it's just a waste of a card in your hand. The 2 damage won't do much unless you can do the maths where Tinkerbell clears a lot of stuff and then Triton's Decree clears the last bit. But I've added it in here because I think people might try their luck with the card. So semi-respect it, respect the hustle if you want to try use it. But yeah, the scenario where they miss their one drop and then play their Bucky is just not a very common play for green steel. And if a green steel player has missed their one drop, the Bucky on two is going to be painful, but them missing their one drop puts them in just a really bad spot. They want to play something on turn one. So yeah, it's in here, but not really great. Baboom, yeah, versus a red purple, you might opt to play a Baboom on a Flynn over a Smee. You might not because you can play the Smee out, keep it so you have more attack than them. They'll play the Sisu. You can quill down so your Smee has the same attack as the Sisu and stop it. But also, yeah, it's a Diablo answer, let's be honest. And it's sort of daunting on me how much I've had to talk about Diablo, but that card is very good. And it's giving Green Steel draw, which is the one way we can sort of beat them is they gas themselves out. They don't have particularly amazing draw, but with Diablo they now do. It's crazy that deck went from having probably the worst draw in the game to having the best card that draws next to like a card like Hiram. But yeah, it's just going to answer it straight away for you. Diablo and Flynn, so that's why you're seeing it quite commonly in decks. Rise of Titans, there's a lot of I don't know if for Lorcana using the word philosophy is a bit too deep for this, but there's a lot of theory around Rise of Titans. I've been hot and cold on the card, so completely removed it from the deck. Didn't want to see it in the deck. I believed that if you had Zeus and you have Captain Hook, that's a good answer, and it still is, because this Titans is just for Queen's Castle. There's not many other locations you're threatening, but I'll go over the other bits it can do. So you can completely not run Rise of Titans as long as you have uh, a decent amount of Zeuses in your deck and you have a Hook or a Smee on board. You can be like, well, when you lay the Queen's Castle, I'll shoot it and then trade and just take it out. But Rise of Titans, I've put one off in my deck. I like it for it's actually a bit more versatile than I thought it was. Um, so yeah, of course you can take out a Queen's Castle. Uh, that's great, but also you'll have these really crazy moments where you might be against a red blue, sorry, or a blue steel, and you just want to take one item out for your aerial activation, or they might have a dime out, and they'll be like, well, I'll take that out, and that's gonna really mess up your game plan. Um, so yeah, it's a one off or a two off, not a card you want to really max out. You're gonna have a lot of games where it's just dead, Green Steel it'd be really confusing for you to use Titans on a hidden cove because it's a one drop and you spent 3 ink to remove something that cost one. So I don't think that's the correct answer for hidden cove. But talking about hidden cove, I'm going to segue to Smash. Smash is a card I've just recently dropped after it being redundant for a couple days of webcam battles and local battles. I still think it's good. I think it deserves a place, and it's got a lot of options and a lot of good things. It's just steel removal, so really, let's be honest, for a fair price for fair damage, you can't complain about that at all. The idea was that Hidden Cove came down, and I keep getting this play where a green steel player would play Diablo on turn one, and then on turn two shift Diablo, play Hidden Cove, and then move to the Hidden Cove. So even if I had a Baboom in hand, I'm not removing it. So I went for Rise of Titans, and yeah, it does work. But the play when they Hidden Cove for the Diablo is very uncommon. You say, and to get the Smash in hand, you'd have to play a higher amount of it. So I went up to two, so I'd have to mulligan for it. So I was mulligan heavy for a very specific situation that only happened in one game, which I might have won anyway because they didn't set up a Bucky. So it went out for me. But it also has some other bits. Like I say, if Cogsworth sings and a Maui trades, you now have a 3 cost complete answer to it, and you'll be at about 8 ink at that point, give or take. So you now have a good answer for that. If an aerial's out, you can take an aerial out just straight away. Ursula, most blue steel players won't care about Ursula, but a 3 drop Ursula it also removes that, and just it's overkill for a lot of things. It's going to take out a Pegasus. It's just steel removal, but it does sadly cost 3, which also puts you in the same range as 2 ramp cards, and there's unlikely chance you'd ever want to play it over ramp. So yeah, but it's just going to be in the deck. I'm going to stop talking about Smash because I've just realised I've been talking about it for a little bit too long. Avalanche, in my opinion, in theory, the deck and the card should be it just a staple in the deck. I mean, it helps us with two matchups that we have good win rates into, but we do struggle a little bit with. So it will remove a location, it will do one damage to everything. So it will take out a Bucky, and it will also take out a Queen's Castle. So in theory, the card should be very very good. I think if it was a song, it would be a staple, and we would cut down on how many grab your swords you have. But it's just clunky to play. It's not an inkable. Like I say, because it's not inkable, we'd have to play a lower amount of it. Will we draw it on the games we want to draw it? If we don't, it's just going to be a waste. Um, yeah, it's not appearing in any of my lists, but I've seen players use it to some good success. So yeah, it's going to stick around. One jump ahead, like I say, it's another ramp card. You've got one jump on two, play a four drop the next turn. That's great. You could Hiram draw, you could Tala. If your end game goal is completely to just hyper ramp and get to Dime and get to Tamatoa and get to Dime targets in general, it's a great card for that because it's just going to give you one up on that. Um, Against red blue, we want to sort of keep up with their ramp. If they've done one jump into Quill, that's really good for them, but not good for us because we're just not going to keep up with the ramp. And the great thing about blue still is we're a ramp deck. We play more expensive things earlier on, and that's our like thing. That's our unique thing. If another deck's doing that and doing that better, we're in a worse spot for that. But yeah, I don't play it. A lot of players, if you're new to blue still, do not fear the two drop Ursula on it. That's um, in my opinion, you'd prefer they two drop Ursula that than they would set up a Bucky. So you're not in a terrible spot if they do that. Yeah, two drop Ursula would never be the reason why you wouldn't include the card. So yeah, it's just ramp. You know what I mean? It's got loads going for it. Along came Zeus. A card. It has a bit of debate in the blue steel sort of chat. Savich does great success with it, and he 4Xs the card out, loves the cards. Don't blame anyone for loving the card. It's solid, and it's a song. So you can get to a point where you'll one jump ahead, play a Tala or a Hiram, set it up, do whatever these things want to do, and then now you can sing your Zeus. A Zeus with anything that's got 2 damage will remove a Queen's Castle, so you can Zeus, and last ditch effort, you can even Baboom as well, so you don't even need a character on board. I think it always needs to be represented in the deck. How many you want to play does show what approach you are taking with the deck. But it's just really strong card for that. It's an uninkable, so I wouldn't be confident playing it at 4x, but I don't know, I'm not Savage. I'm not that good, so it is a strong card. I've mentioned a lot about uninkables, and there's so much to talk about blue still, and I can't fit it all into one video. But uninkables, you'll find decks tend to get around between 12 and 15. We get a little bit of a leeway in blue still because we have a Quill, and that's also another reason why red blue you'll see them go up to about 20 because they're just going to start putting things in the Inkwell. And we also have pseudo sort of ink, like if on your turn you just play one jump ahead and you don't ink a card, you've still gained ink. You could have gained extra ink if you had the inkable, but you've still gained some, so it's not terrible. So there's always the debate of having an uninkable, but the uninkable gives you ink. It's not a bad thing. But yeah, no, back to Zeus. Great cards. Sing it, play it, remove anything. Remove most things. Really good. Let It Go. It's a funny card because in set 3, when I was still very, very into Blue Steel, and I still am, it was like we needed an answer to Cinderella, the 7-drop with resist, so people just went, I'll put Let It Go in the deck. Because we can't trade for that. There's nothing in the deck. It's very awkward. I have to run things in to deal with it. So people put it in, but we've realized, it takes out a Tamatoa. It can, if your game plan is just, I've set up my dime and I'm going to dime tap things each turn, and they're going to play things and try and race you. You can be like, I'm going to dime tap things. Here's also Let It Go to remove whatever you play, whatever you're trying to establish. Just put it in the Inkwell. I don't care about the 1 ink because I've still got double your ink anyway, so you can have that ink. I don't care. So it's really great. You can sing it. So you could get to a spot where you've set up In say a mirror as an example, you can set up a Cogsworth and your Smees or whatever, and they're turning sideways, and then they might set up a Smee or a Tamatoa, and you'll be Cogsworth Sing, let it go on the Tamatoa, and then you're just making them have to spend another turn trying to get the lore because and stalling them. It's a stall card. It can be as well as hard removal. It's very versatile. It's very good, and you can just shove it in the Inkwell for the matches you don't need to see it. Uh, so really strong card. I've gone up to 2x on it as well because I'm always finding I get it in the opening hand and ink it, and then I can't remove Tamatoa. Yeah, Whole New Worlds. There's two versions of the deck sort of running. Of course, Whole New World is the standard option. It's the bread and butter of the deck. If say on the play, most of the time you will win by not even looking at their boards too hard. You'll just be playing stuff, singing Whole New World, ramping, rushing, turning sideways, diming, doing all that stuff. Um, but there's a lot more versatility to it. Again, I'm not. I mean, use the word. I only use the word theory, not philosophy. Um, it's nice to be able to burn cards in your opponent's hand. It's nice to be saying he's stocking up on cards. I'm going to burn them. At a high level play, it might even stop people being like, I'm not going to play friends on the other side, or I'm not going to draw X amount of cards because I know you're about to whole new world me and burn whatever I draw. So I'm going to hold back on my draw. Um, you might not even have it in hand, and the other opponent might play that. Say you ramp down to one card in hand, so that one card is a Hiram or a Porpschool or a Tamatoa. They might think that's a whole new world. I'm going to hold back on what I'm doing with my draw because I don't want to get all my cards burnt. But yeah, you might have games where you're whole new world and they'll go, you've burnt Medusa, Big Sisu, and a B prep, and you're like, great, I'm working this game now with less removal options from my opponent, so things have a higher chance of sticking. Take it out of the deck, still good. I mean, it's if anyone's played a wheel deck before, once you've got one in hand, that's great. Once you've got two, that sucks because they can't do anything and it's a dead card. And recently, with getting four more pop schools, we just have a lot more draw options. So yeah, you can take that out and you can rely on a Hiram, a Tala, and even How Far I Let It Go, which I didn't add to this deck because I don't know, I probably should have added that one. But How Far I Go, it's the four costs. Take two off the top of your deck, put one in your Inkwell, one in your hand. Great card as well because you've got a lot of fours that can sing it and even fives can sing it. So yeah, Whole New Worlds. I'm still on the Whole New World list, and again with Whole New World, it's not a card where you want to go. I might just add like a couple in the deck. It's like no, you commit to being a wheel deck, or you don't play wheel. Um, you could play around with three if you wanted, but I'd say you either commit to playing a wheel deck or you don't. Grab your swords. Awesome that we get to play 3x of that. It's really fun. I would stick with 3x, and yes, that does mean we have a lot of high uninkables, but we have a lot of great cards as well. So 3x of that, it's going to clear a lot of the boards, and into the certain matches, you just quill it away if you can. But yeah, really strong card. I don't need to talk too much about how great removal that is because it's good. And you compare it with things, Tinkerbell, and then you can baboom the rest. You can fire the cannons the rest. Got anything else? No, you might even be like, grab your swords, run a hook in or a smee in to a cogsworth or anything else that has 5 health. Just a good card. Popsicle and Fortisphere, amazing. We got both of these. Of course, you pair them up, they make Tamatoa stronger. Hiram's going to draw from them. Don't really need to go over that too much. I'll do a video on the mulligan strategy. Having this on turn 1 is really nice because now you have an item set up, so when you get a Hiram, you can draw with it. But it's not make or break if you play it on turn 1. It's just a really nice spot to be in. You have it set up. So yeah, I'll go through that in the mulligan in another video. I'll just cover the abilities. Popsicle's good. You can keep a smear alive in questing if you just want to keep turning sideways with it. Say you've took some chip damage on a Cogsworth and you want him exerted, and they would have 3 damage and he's taken 2 damage, you can heal it off and keep it alive. Yeah, it's just healing and draw, it's nice. Fortisphere, I've never been at a spot where I think it's useful, but in theory there could be say you've sung with Cogsworth and you have a Mickey on board, you can be, okay, and I put the bodyguard on the Mickey, so the Maui is going to hit the Mickey and not hit the Cogsworth, but just a niche little thing. Costs 1 to use. You're likely just using it for the draw potential. That's about it. Quill, 4x the card. With the set 1 ramp cards, it feels like they really hit home with them. Uh, just they're just all staples and all goods. I don't understand how this is an inkable, but a Mickey isn't, because it's just way more powerful than a Mickey. Yeah, you can get to a spot where you throw everything in the inkwell, and then you can get one extra ink because you'll be at 4, and it's not even exerted. That's amazing. And play a popsicle or put a Captain Hook out, fire the cannons, develop your brain. Which is great. Yeah, if you need to hyper ramp, you can use it. It's good. And even if they Benja, break it, any sense, beast it, you've still gained 1 ink from that turn, so it's just done very well. The only times I wouldn't use it is into a green steel because you are thinning your hand for them. So I would opt for a Mickey or a 1 jump and just play with that ramp. You don't need to hyper ramp and dime into a green steel. So yeah, it's just a really good card though. Great Stone Dragon. It's going to be in people's lists. Every time I look at the card, it somehow gets worse. It's like one of them pictures where you don't notice everything, but every time you look, you notice something new. So I was noticing today it's only character cards from your discard. So it comes in exerted, and you get to put 1 character from your discard into your Inkwell exerted. It's insanely slow. I don't see many upsides to it. Potentially, it's good in red blue, but in blue still, I just don't think it should be there. But again, with the Winnie, I think there's still believers in Great Stone Dragon, so you might see it played, but no, it's not for me. Uh, so I don't really have much else to say on it. Um, Lucky Dime. I love the sort of history, or like the history, like it's a big thing. I like the thought process for Lucky Dime. It didn't, when set 3 launched, it didn't get massive traction. People went, oh, I need Lucky Dime on my deck. But I remember hanging around the Blue Steel chats and talking to Sky as well, who I think took it to great success in an event. I took it to a local in London called Dark Sphere, and I brought 1 in my deck. I didn't have any dime targets, um, and the belief behind it was it just worked like Spellbook, so it took you over the edge when they were B prepping and they were winning the board. It sort of just pushed you over the edge, and I love that Sky ran with that, and he got like Bells in the deck and was dime tapping Bells, and now it's become a huge staple in most lists. Uh, 2 seems fine. You never seem to be in an issue with 2. So Tamatoa is great. If you see it early in your hand, it is upsetting, but like I say, if it's in your discard, you can find it again with the Tamatoa. Um, there are matchups when you won't use it because you just want to win the board, but yeah, I feel everyone must have experienced Lucky Dime and how good it is. You might even have a game where it's red purple and say they haven't established that much lore lead and they haven't established that much board control, and you can just play it naked and no dime targets, and the next turn you'll be like, right, I've got a Belle, a Tamater, an Aerial in my hand, so I'm just going to start playing that and tapping for 5, and you've got, even if you start at 0 lore doing that play, you're like, right, you've got 4 turns to win this game, because you're never going to take the dime out. I'm always going to play something, so you have to deal with what I play, and you have to win in 4 turns. So just a brilliant card. Yeah, like I say, you have many plays where you can hyper ramp with 1 jump and quill and just ignore what they're doing and dime tap. Um, yeah, that's brilliant. McDuck Manor. I love the cards. I can't find room for it. The main reason why you play it is into red, purple, and red, blue. You can be a bit like, I know you're going to be prep my board and take out everything I have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a McDuck Manor so you'll be prep and I'm still going to gain 2 lore and you still have to deal with this thing. It's pretty good right now where there is less and less. We got a height of Maui's Hook, so it was sort of being a bit of a struggling card, but you can do amazing things of, sing Whole New Worlds and then play a Mukduk Manor and a Smee, or, Mukduk Manor and then something else, and be like, I'm just gaining lore, deal with all of my multiple threats. Once they've dealt with your Mukduk Manor, you can be like, right, that took your turn to deal with that. I'm just going to keep playing other stuff and just keep loading the threats out. I've seen it at 2x in decks because it's just probably still quite a tight list, to be honest with you. But yeah, no, it's another good card. It has a lot of play in it. I haven't been running it because of just the matchups I get into, and I'm finding it going into the Inkwell a lot when I was like, I really wish that was another Baboom or just another character that I could put on the board. But yeah, it deserves to be in lists if you're struggling with B preps, board wipes, and things like that. Right, I think I've gone and babbled on about most of these cards, but yeah, I think how far you gone should have been added in there as well. But besides that, I hope this was helpful to someone who was watching it. So thank you.